I'm being increasingly asked to explain more about the eco cycle or the life cycle, and my own views on it or my own interpretation on it. And actually, I've been on quite a long exploration about it together with my friend Manuela Ramirez. And just for you to know that this is actually originally coming from the adaptive cycle model, which is something that was developed more for the environmental science space, where they were looking at soil degradation and regeneration, and they were looking at ecosystems and applying it, for example, to forests and other kind of settings. And then Liberating Structures has started using it for projects. So discovering that it can be also applied to organizations and the organizational space. And we've been looking at it more from a life perspective, like personal life perspective, but also from an organizational development perspective. So how actually it is serving us as a lens, an awareness lens to organizational transformation, organization development. And what we have here in a very simplified form is 4 different phases. So we have the phase of renewal, which is a phase of transformation in a way, but it's this moment where the seeds are still in the soil below the surface and waiting for spring to arrive. So it's this moment where there is no newness yet emerging, there's nothing new coming. But it's the moment that there is something there. Some people might be aware of it and some people might be not. It might be just be an idea that you have parked away, or might be a plan that is quite loose still at the moment. Or it might just be a wish that you might be holding in a way without having really materialized. Then you have, on the other side, you have birth, which is the moment where something new is emerging. So that means that you're really seeing the unfolding of something. It's the birth of a plant, the birth of a baby, but it can also be the birth of an idea. So the kickoff of something, for example, is a really wonderful birth moment, or developing a roadmap of where you want to go. So it's kind of when you're at the beginning of something and it's kind of slowly unfolding. And this might be a process that might be very smooth in some cases, and in some cases there might be a lot of complications and might be a really difficult process. And then from there, you don't quite know what it will become. But eventually you end up in a place where something has matured. And when something has matured fully, it means that there is a certain level of mastery. So you might be mastering a skill that you have learned, but it might also just be that you have a certain level of experience that you can share with others, or that a project has reached its maturity, or that a change initiative or something in the organization is just going really, really well. In marketing, you refer to it as the cash cow. So the moment that something is really running away, kind of the star and the cash cow, where something is running really, really well, but you know that this is a momentarily phase as well. So that there might be a moment where this might not be the case anymore. So you're also wanting to preserve some of that knowledge, some of that experience, some of that development, and the value that's being generated for times that might be a bit more difficult. And then on the other extreme, you have destruction. So destruction, we might attach quite some negative feeling or labels to it, but it's actually very important in nature and in ecosystems. It's the moment where you create space for something new to arrive. So it's a space where you can, you need space for innovation, you need space for reflection, you need space for creativity to come out. And the space can be time, the space can be resources, it can be many other things. But it's actually essential for an organization to evolve, to have something being destroyed, what no longer serves us, to be destroyed. And then next to these 4 phases, we have on the extremes, letting come and letting go. So there's letting come, which is really this moment before birth, where you feel like you're onto something, and there's certain energy building up around it, or momentum building up around it, but you cannot quite grasp it yet. So it might be that there's some excitement attached to it because you really love speaking about it and you feel like you're onto something and you cannot quite name it yet. Or it might be that there's some impatience and some frustration building up because you're just generating all these ideas, but you cannot fully converge it yet to something concrete. And it's a very important phase because it might not be comfortable for everybody, but it's a phase where you are actually very much in creativity. You're very much in listening mode and learning mode. And you're very much in touch with this idea of questioning of what might be really meaningful and valuable. And then on the other extreme, you have letting go, which is really this idea of letting go what no longer serves us, but also there might be some mourning around it, some sadness around it. Like, for example, when an organization moves from one office to the other, and there is a kind of farewell moment of saying goodbye to your old offices. But it might also be a relief. So maybe that there was this project that wasn't really working very well, and finally was decided to close it down. And sometimes we attach to this letting go and destruction very, very negative emotions, because of course it can also involve a lot of suffering. Like when we're thinking, for example, about a war scenario where there is a lot of suffering going on. And similarly to that, it also happens in nature, that there is a lot of suffering happening in nature. And what we're actually looking at here is simply to see what are the narratives that really serve us on the long run. So extinction of species is something that is happening on a daily basis today. And at the same time, there is a certain evolution happening in the wider system. Some people have very much doom scenarios for the planet, maybe more for humanity, actually. And that's one way of looking at it. And that's one very useful story. And in some cases, another narrative might be more useful. So, for example, looking at deep time and what it means for the universe, that this planet might be different at some point, for example. So you can look at things from very different lenses. And it's always the question is really what will serve us? What will bring us further? What will help us to evolve? And then in the middle, you have this aspect of not knowing. And that's really just this acknowledgement that we don't know it all, that we are just a small part of the system, and that our worldview, what we can see about the organization, about ourselves, is actually limited, and that we cannot predict the future. So when something is born, we don't know if it will ever mature. We don't know what it will become. So there is this aspect of not knowing that we're dealing with. And similarly, after destruction, there is a moment of void. And we don't quite know what will continue. We might not even have noticed that there is seeds under the ground waiting to emerge. So that not knowing is a zone of a lot of discomfort for many of us, that space of uncertainty that's built around it, and maybe even anxiety that's built around it. And at the same time, it's just a very important aspect of life. And it's what actually makes life livable as well, that we cannot predict everything. That there's a lot of possibilities that we have, and that it also can bring creativity. So I'm inviting you to look at this life cycle as a way of navigating life, and as a way of constantly learning about life. And I'm really inviting you to be playful around it. And that's also why with Manuela we've developed the Lifecycle game, because we really would love you to discover it in a playful way, and in a way that invites you to constantly learn and let go in a very light way of the things that you're telling yourself right now about your life and about your organization. So really inviting you to play and to test, and hopefully to let us know how your experience is with this game.